Let's take a look at the underlying data architecture for TLC Community Credit Union. The reason that this one is a good example of Google Analytics 4 and data configuration is because of the complexity of their various third-party services that are integrated with the site and integrated into their same Google Analytics 4 setup. So, for example, they have an online banking service. They have a service for loan applications, another service for online account opening for checking and savings accounts. They have a service for their contact form solution, a different service for home loans versus other types of loans. So there's a lot going on here. Let's first take a look inside Google Analytics 4 and see how some of these events of these various actions are flowing, regardless of the fact of whether they happen on the core website properly or in one of the third-party websites that are then integrated and connected. So you can see in our, actually, let me show you this admin setup. You can see where we connect these sites together, these different services in our web stream. And then I believe this is under configure tag settings, and we have domain configuration. So these are all of our different websites that are connected together from a pass the cookie standpoint, so that each of these third-party services can have their actions that we're looking out for attributed back to the source, the traffic source that happened on the original website. So if we take a peek at some of these events, you'll see what we're tracking from some of those services. We've got, all the stock ones are here, but then we also have the Meridian Link service that's tracking certain events, and then we track custom parameters based on, what stage of the loan application they're in, what type of loan they're looking for, those types of details. We also have, and then we break that down into three sort of conversion statuses, which are application start, application lead, and application complete. Those are basically what you would expect them to be. An application start is when someone first engages with the loan application. An application lead is when they've past the point in the application where they've given up their personal details that can then be followed up on. This is the one that we kind of highlight as our actual conversion when we're using this to integrate with Google Ads, because this is the stage at which kind of marketing's job is done, and now it's a sales job. But the website does have the ability for them to complete their application online, so we track that as well when someone completes the application online. We also have this one called Generate Lead, this event, which is going to be what I focus on here, because this Generate Lead event is coming from the most complicated version of their setup, which is their contact form solution. So the reason that their contact form solution is complex is because the contact forms live in an iframe. So let me show you an example of this and then show you it working inside Tag Manager. Maybe the best way to do this will be to open up Tag Manager, and we'll use the preview mode so that I can show you how these events fire. Now we have the website opened in Tag Manager preview, and I'm going to navigate to one of our forms. So I know that we have one here on the Your Life page. So this form, if we inspect the code, we'll see that it is being deployed inside of an iframe right here. The trouble with trying to track things through iframes is that the two windows, by default, they don't talk to each other. So that means even if we put Google Analytics inside of this Documatics form, it would, and we were able to include it in our Google Analytics event hits. The issue we would face is those event hits wouldn't know where the user originally came from. It would lose attribution for the traffic source because this website's cookie is disconnected from the parent Windows cookie, and so it just doesn't know. The way that around that disconnect is to write custom code inside of the iframe. Instead of trying to track the data inside of the iframe, we write custom code that sends a message to the parent window that the parent window then can catch and turn that into the conversion activity. So now that the event is actually occurring on the parent window, triggered by what's being kind of shouted up from inside the iframe, all of those things that would have been disconnected are now tied to the original traffic cookie, the original user cookie. And so all of the attribution, whether they came from ads or social media or a local business page, all of that is maintained. So let's take a look at how this actually happens. So it requires two levels of code integration. First is on the forms themselves. So if we look at web forms and we open one of these up, what is the easiest? We'll just look at the first one. So inside of, and this is going to be different depending on your software application, obviously, but for this one, here's how we built it. Inside of, I believe it's the greeting tab, there is an area where we could enter custom HTML. And so we wrote a script that goes into here. And this script, it does a little bit stylistically so that we can deal with how the iframe looks at various screen device sizes. We can kind of stack the order of the input fields depending on the breakpoints of the master website. So that's a little bit what we're doing with styles here and doing some colors and branding. But the script part, the part that I've been talking about in terms of what we're doing with our data tracking, is here. We're setting what's called a mutation observer. It's looking for output of a success message from the form software. Again, this is going to be software dependent. But when that happens, we're sending a message. We're sending a message to the parent window that says form submitted home, and that stands for home loan. Then we have to also receive that message. So on the Google Tag Manager side, we have a custom HTML tag called Documatics Listener. This code's job is to listen for those messages to be shouted from various iframe windows. And it's listening for those submissions and then looking for the form ID, looking for event context so that it knows what event to pass into the data layer. The data layer can then catch those events and use them for custom triggers. So this would be the trigger that is related to the code that gets shouted out from here, listened to by the tag manager listener, and then when that happens, it fires this event, which the trigger can then recognize and turn into a tag. And then the tag is going to send this generate lead event. And along in the process, it's captured a variable for the form ID, which can then be passed into this custom details parameter, which goes into Google Analytics 4 into this section so that we know which form we're actually collecting that generate lead event from. So that's probably the best example of a complex iframe type of integration that uses custom scripting to bridge that gap that is typically disconnected. You pretty much can only go with a custom script solution for those types of scenarios because of all the different ways that these things can be programmed. But that's one of the things that we're excited to help you with. Thanks for watching.